There are a lot of cliches about what it means to be an Arab man. Obviously being very dominant, being the head of the household, being rather rigid, um, being very traditional in your beliefs, being an Arab man, that there's an inherent violence in you. Like every culture, there's obvious patriarchy in our history in the Middle East. But there's patriarchy in the history of Europe, there's patriarchy in the history of the United States, there's patriarchy in the history of every culture we can possibly think of. But conflict has really stunted our ability to move on from that. Because of the conflict that exists in this region, we need to really work on concepts that counteract that type of thinking. If you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. Many young men will know what it feels like to hold a toy gun and to fire a toy gun and aim and shoot, and before they have the ability to write their name. But when we socialize people for violence, when we let people think that the only way that this problem can be solved is through violent means, is through war, is through fighting, is through death, then that becomes the problem. Men are human beings who have been taught violence their entire lives. Men are human beings who have been taught not to emotionally express, not to cry, not to show any form of weakness, but to fight and be tough and be strong and hide from anybody else any emotion to the contrary. We're never going to be able to be rid of violence until we start ridding how we raise people, specifically men and boys, to be violent. We often say, literally from the moment you come out of the womb, you're either dressed in pink or blue, and the gender socialization starts happening from that moment. And when we find men at a certain point of their life where they are pushing away the people that they love most in their lives, and they're acting in a way that they wouldn't even want to, they feel remorse after acting violently, the solution is not just to punish. That doesn't teach them anything. The solution is to work with them, to have them understand how negative that behavior can be for themselves, for their loved ones, for their colleagues, just like anyone using violence. And mothers are as responsible as fathers are for what children learn about gender in the house. And that's why it's so important to work with fathers and mothers and all parents. We do trainings with young men and boys in Lebanon, refugee and Lebanese populations, because it's all about fundamentally questioning what you believe pertaining to roles of men and women, how they interact with one another. Where did they come from? How are they influenced by media and your role models and your childhood? And where did you learn all of these lessons? The toxic elements are that you're often taught that emotional expression is weak. You're often taught that you need to be the strong and silent type. You're often taught that you need to be tough and hard, and those are your definitions of strong. That can have a very huge impact on you as a human being. When you don't emotionally express, when you don't talk about your feelings with other people, you distance yourself from other people. It's not a weakness, it's hiding. Under the traditional patriarchal concept of what it means to be a man, it's almost saying that men should be strong like steel. So steel is cold and hard, and it's strong, it holds a lot, but you put pressure on it and pressure on it and pressure on it, and eventually the steel breaks. It shatters. Strength is probably more like rubber. If you can't provide for your family, maybe it's because the job market is difficult. Maybe it's because you just moved. Maybe it's because something happened, and that doesn't make you any less or more of a man. It just makes you a person in a particular situation who can work on things to make things better, and who can do other things that are not seen as masculine to also contribute to the family, to the society, to everything. It's about bending. It's about, that's how we're strong. It's not about what type of a man you want to be. It's about the type of a person that you want to be. And it's not about the type of woman that you want to be. It's about the type of person that you want to be. It all has to do with human rights. It has to do with people treating other people with respect and allowing other people, being tolerant to what other people feel they would like to do or they need to do, as long as they're not hurting anyone else. So the ideal when we talk about gender equality, or when we talk about what we would want men to walk away with when they are in one of our programs, or when we get a chance to speak to them, is the power of partnership. Very often we talk about women's empowerment and we think because we're empowering women, men are losing power, but that's the wrong way to look at it. Power in this sense is a little bit like energy. It's never created nor destroyed, it's shared, it shifts. And when we talk about women having power, men get a different type of power. So when we talk about men not being solely responsible for providing for the family, where they have someone else who is also working with them to provide for the family, that's power for the men in that relationship. Again, assuming a man-woman relationship here. But that's power for that person in the relationship, because they no longer have the same pressures because someone else is helping them with that. It's the same thing with raising the kids and the household chores. When all of that pressure isn't put on one person and it's spread to the partnership, to the two people, they read about different forms of power, such as power over or power with. Power over means I have power over another person, that I am more powerful than them. I am stronger, I have more influence, however you analyze the power, that I have it over another person. Power with means that when we work together, we have more power. We are greater than the sum of our individual parts. Being a man does not make me compete with a woman. A woman making money does not make me any less of a man. At ABAAD Resource Center for Gender Equality, the organization here in Lebanon that works on masculinities that I work for, we have several things under our masculinities program. Essentially, one of the core things that we do is masculinities workshops and trainings with men and women. And we have several activities and manuals that are on our website that explain how we do that work. We also have the Men's Center, which is a center where men can come to get anonymous, confidential psychological counseling free of cost. And the reason for this was primarily one of the priorities of the center is to work to rehabilitate men who might have abusive behaviors. I would tell you to ask questions. I would tell you that being skeptical about things you might hear when you hear about feminism or gender equality it's natural. I was very skeptical when I was growing up and I heard similar things. I was very skeptical as a young adult when I heard similar things. But at the end of the day, skepticism is healthy as long as it leads to something healthy. We've had centuries of those more traditional, patriarchal, rigid gender roles and gender understandings. We've had centuries of that very conservative understanding of, again, what it means to be a man, the roles of men, the roles of women, security, leadership, etc., etc. It's time for evolving. It's time for moving on to something that will lead to more peace.